because I started realizing I was like, man, I can do this by myself, but it's going to take a long time. And in my eyes, it's like, I've got 9 months to turn my life around, be someone I'm actually proud to see in the mirror. Because I actually, through my entire 20s, I don't have a memory of ever actually looking in a mirror because there was so much baggage and stuff. And I was so disgusted with who I was. And when I was a kid, every time I would see a mirror, I would just sit there and like yell at the person looking back, like, I hate you. You're such an idiot. Why do you let people do this to you? All this stuff. And so it got to the point where I would just avoid a mirror. And I don't want my kids growing up like this. Luckily, I had just enough common sense to realize if I don't fix it, I'm going to pass it on to them somehow. And and then I said, before I knew it, I'd gone so deep down the rabbit hole, all of a sudden friends started coming to me and said, man, how did you turn your life around? Like, can you help me? And then they started referring friends to me, and coaching just sort of found me.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today I'm talking with Kip Brooks. Jesus. Kip is he's a life coach, or I don't know if it's a life coach or you're a coach of some sort. And also you responded to one of my posts about bottoms and life struggles, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and explain how you got here? Since I'm tongue-tied.
Hey, it's Friday, man. We're almost there. Of course, that doesn't matter anymore. Days don't exist, right? It's
every day's a Friday now.
Yeah, it's like there's tomorrow, today, and yesterday, and dates and things don't exist anymore. So I was having like suicidal thoughts, or the equivalent of, when I was 8 years old, and then stayed with me through teenage years, and even going into my 20s or early 20s, and that led to various heavy alcohol use through my teenage years, and then I had bottles stashed of alcohol all through the house in my yard. And when I was 14, 15 years old, would take several hits of that every night to go to sleep. And then prescription drugs and things through mid to late teens. And then that led into dealing drugs, and then especially Coke, and then ingesting it quite probably more than I doubted. Then always just in the wrong crowd. I never saw any other option for me to ever make it other than, figuring out some way to get around the law. And then finally got into my 20s, and I realized, man, this just isn't really working. It's like, maybe I should try something else. And finally that started making some headways, started having some success in life legally. And then found out I was going to be a parent, and it threw some rocket fuel on that. By that point, I was actually doing pretty well in society's eyes, but I knew, I was like, there's a whole lot of skeletons in my closet that I've never truly faced, and it's like, I need to figure out how to face them, slay those dragons, and not dress my kid in the same baggage I've been carrying around. And so that led me into personal development and coaches and mentors and everything else, because I started realizing, I was like, man, I can do this by myself, but it's going to take a long time. And in my eyes, it's like, I've got 9 months to turn my life around. And be someone I'm actually proud to see in the mirror. And, cause I actually, through my entire 20s, I don't have a memory of ever actually looking in a mirror because there was, so much baggage and stuff. And I was so disgusted with who I was. And, when I was a kid, every time I would see a mirror, I would just sit there and like yell at the person looking back, like, I hate you. You're such an idiot. Why do you let people do this to you? All this stuff. And so it got to the point where I would just avoid a mirror. And, it's like, man, I don't want my kids growing up like this. And, luckily I had just enough common sense to realize, if I don't fix it, I'm going to pass it on to them somehow. And, and then I said, before I knew it, I'd gone so deep down the rabbit hole, all of a sudden friends started coming to me and said, man, how did you turn your life around? Like, can you help me? And then they started referring friends to me, and coaching just sort of found me. And it's, haven't looked back since.
That's crazy how that worked. You did, you know what I mean? Just your friend network, and it just built you something from there. Let me ask you something about, being that young and being suicidal. How does that, like, what was going on, at that age where, I mean, cause at 8, I mean, you basically, you're just coming out of the most important years of your life where you're figuring out how you interact with the world and the world interacts with you, your parents. You start building your personality, who you're going to become, into adolescence. What's going on in that time, that puts those thoughts in your head? I mean, cause when you're that young, you get things put in your head. You don't necessarily come up with those thoughts on your own, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, no, it's, glad you pointed that out. You actually make a really good point. Something that a lot of people don't realize is, so we have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, and unconscious mind runs over 95% of everything we do. It's all our behavior, all of our beliefs, our values, all of that. And, our conscious mind, though, also comes with what's called a critical faculty, and that chooses, what we believe is truth and what we think is, make believe. Problem is, we don't have really either one of those, until we're about 7 or 8 years old. So before that, everything that we hear comes in as truth, whether it's sarcasm or whatever. And this is where a lot of adults have conflicting beliefs. Where it's like, part of me wants to do this, but part of me is this, and they can't figure it out. And it's, it's because everything you heard as a kid, like I said, whether it was a joke or whatever, it's like, it all comes in as truth. And so with me, first, probably need to, clarify exactly, like, when I say being suicidal at 8 years old, a lot of people have a vision of an 8-year-old with a gun to his head. Luckily, I was too naive and, innocent to know that was a thing, that I could do that. So what it looked like for me was, I was taught to say my prayers every night. And, so what those prayers were, around 8 years old, they went from, now I lay me down to sleep to, if there's really a higher power up there that loves us, like I hear, I won't wake up tomorrow. It's like, because I won't have to spend another day in this life. It's like, I need out. And, it's like, I just don't want to wake up. And that was it. At 10, I actually had a grandfather who committed suicide. But by then, I had something to hold on to a little bit. I had my younger sister was born when I was about 7.5, and she became like my favorite person on the planet. And I believed I needed to be around to protect her from the crap I was going through. The environment I grew up in, my dad was into all sorts of things. He had a legal business, but he had a whole lot of extracurricular activities out of that. He was an alcoholic, among other things, and chain smoker, everything. And my mom was the polar opposite, and they worked in the business together. And I don't have a single memory of them not screaming at each other. If they were within 20 feet, if they could see each other, they were yelling. They would chase each other around the house yelling. And I would go and hide, not under my bed, because I was like, they can come from all four sides. I would push my bed up against the wall, and I would hide on the other side of it between the bed and the wall, like curled up in the fetal position, just trying to escape the yelling. And I never felt safe at home. And my my mom was the lecturer of the group, and my dad would not talk. Like if he did something wrong, he would just come in swinging. And sometimes it'd be 3 days afterwards. And he would just literally like blow in the door. I have a memory of my brother, my sister, and I playing. And he came just blasting in the room one night and just picked me up and just drilled me a couple of times and then left. And I had no idea what in the world had happened. All I knew was I got, punched several times by this full grown man. And so it's just things like that. I was always paranoid. I was always terrified. And it got into where I was actually starting to hallucinate a little bit of, every time I saw a picture or something, anything that had eyes or a mirror, like I just believed there was somebody watching me on the other side. And that actually came from my dad had installed cameras in different places, at his work. And he would brag to me that like nobody knew they were being watched because the monitors were at our house. And, it was old Chiefs in the 80s. Like you couldn't see anything on it, but he was just bragging to me so much that like, they don't even know they're being watched. And he planted this seed of like, is he watching me all the time? It was like that type of thing. And up until I was well into my 30s, actually, I would have that idea, like it was floating around unconsciously that there's hidden cameras everywhere. I knew better by then, but it was still like, it was still there. And then, finally got rid of it. But yeah, so it was just that constant, like on fight or flight mode all the time. Just a survival mode, never getting to relax, or never feeling like I could relax, never feeling secure enough. Like I actually wanted to go to school because it's like, people weren't screaming at each other, it was kind of peaceful, at least for the first few years.
Yeah, that's it really, that causes PTSD. If people don't know, I grew up in a place like that where there was a lot of yelling and, I didn't see a lot of stuff, but I know I probably heard it. And so have you found, having grown up in that, like for me, I ended up that way, in my relationships because of the example that I had growing up. Did you experience that yourself?
Oh yeah. We, say everything's getting programmed in those first 7 or 8 years. And then 7 to 14 is like the modeling years. And, my dad died when I was 15, but up until then, like all I saw were these, was a toxic relationship. And, so a lot of my friendships would turn out that way. Like I got in fist fights with friends all the time for nothing, but I didn't know, because the only example I had of what a man was my dad and his drinking buddies. And I would just see them fall out and fist fight. And, the only time my dad ever once, the only memories I ever have of him looking at me like he was actually proud of me or anything I would take as love was, when he saw me beat up someone in the neighborhood or as I got into my teen years and started chasing women. So it created this, it's like, I can actually get love through hurting people. And so it became this thing of anger equals love. And, so I would show up and these relationships would just fly off the handle, whether it was a friendship or, a romantic relationship or whatever. I was very easy to trigger. And actually even my wife and I first met and we went on a date, like I'd worked on that and, cleared it up quite a bit. I thought it was clear. And I remember on our like first real date, we'd known each other for a while. And, we, went on this trip. It wasn't our first date, but it was we'd taken a weekend away and it was our first time away. And I expressed like how much she meant to me. And she was actually scared because, she's like, why are you so dark? What are you talking about? Like, I'm telling you basically like, I'm all about you, baby. Like that. And, she's like, if I didn't know you before this, she's like, I would be scared to be around you right now. And, I was like, what? And I had no idea what she was talking about. And I had to do a lot of reflection on it. And, I realized, I was like, wow, there's still something there. There's, of how I express love differently than people. There's, when I was trying to make a point or, have an important conversation, so, okay, you got to be aware of that and start working on it. But yeah, and it actually went the opposite way for me for a while. In a relationship where I actually started, I was very disconnected from it and just very indifferent, because it's like, I don't want to fight anymore. And I was like, I don't want, when kids came around, I was like, I don't want them growing up in that I did. But then I became completely dissociated from the relationship and totally indifferent and never fought, and actually became kind of passive in some areas. And then, set a completely horrible example that way for a little while. But it was, and I would just bottle it all up inside and then take it out some other way. And it usually led to getting back to drinking or something else. And then finally, luckily I caught on all that and, was able to fix it relatively soon. But yeah, it's amazing how those habits pick up. I say, even if you rebel against them, it's like, it's in there. It's like, we got to face it. You got to face that demon at some point. Otherwise it's going to take over. It got me in jail and all sorts of stuff when I was younger. So
yeah, it's crazy how that works, huh? You would think that it would be more common sense. And it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but like for me to finally kind of understand that was, I had to see it in my kids. It's like I had to see what my behavior was doing. And here's a good example. So my dog is about 4 years old and my daughter is 3. But for the first year I had my dog, me and my ex fought a lot, right? And a lot of it was me yelling, and because that's how I would get just triggered and just angry, and that's how I knew how to deal with it, is just start, I get imposing and just, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but my dog. So like every time I would raise my voice, my voice would go up an octave, higher, or, he knew what that sound was when, I would get pissed and he would bolt and run and go hide. And so like, even to this day now, he still, like, if my voice, and even it's like, I don't even do that really anymore, but sometimes he'll just hear, just in regular conversation that I'm having with somebody, and it'll go up and he'll just be, is it time to run away now? And I was lucky enough to be able to stop that, once my daughter became like around 2 years old. She started understanding what was going on and realize, and like hiding, at 2 years old, hiding in the furthest point of the house, trying to get away from the yelling. Right. And, and then told us to stop once, at 2, barely could speak hardly at all, had knew few words, but knew enough to say stop in her car seat behind us. And so it was like at that point, yeah, when I was like, okay, this is, I gotta get out of here. Obviously the problem is me, because I can't seem to, get along with this other person. And my immediate way to deal with it is to get angry and, blow up. And so I removed myself from it. And I think that's probably the best thing I could have ever done. Yeah, it sucks that the relationship ended, but I mean, it's like, how my daughter is going to grow up and see, role models of what men and relationships and, things should be, I at least owe it to her to provide her with the best possible, scenarios, right, to learn from.
Yeah.
And it's basically, because it's like you really have to. I mean, if you want to have good people in the world, you have to raise good people.
Yeah.
And that means like, okay, well, all of your screwed up behaviors and things that you were taught as that you grew up with, because all right, we know now, okay. Before, you could probably, our parents could claim ignorance because there was a lot of things that you didn't know. Okay, I'll somewhat buy that. All right, I'll somewhat buy that, because you don't know what you know until you know something different, right?
Yeah.
We just keep repeating, and it goes on down the line, and until somebody like me steps up and goes, no, we can't do this anymore. I want to raise a person who, won't stick around when an asshole like me starts yelling and screaming about something. And, I don't want her to go, oh, well, that's just, I guess this is how relationships are, that's how my dad was. So I'm just going to stick around, instead of like bolting going, screw you. I'm going to go find someone who wants to cuddle me and hug me and not yell at me.
Yeah. It's like, it's funny how, funny again, I use it the same way you did. Like so many people are one end of the spectrum or the other. It's like say I was at first, no fighting whatsoever in front of the kids, make them think everything's perfect and, pretend like it is. And then the other end is like exploding in front of them constantly. It's like, it's fine to have, for them to see the human side of us, but it's like, we've got to be willing to go through it with them and let them see, okay, yeah, we're humans. We have emotions. We all are, and it's perfectly fine. Just working through them in a healthy way instead of the toxic behavior patterns where it almost gets or in many situations, it does get abusive. And that was, the baggage and things we have from childhood is like pops up all the time. It's just been this like beach ball held under the water that's just been festering for so long, and sooner or later it's going to pop up. And unfortunately, it never pops up at a convenient time. And usually, especially in like North American culture, like as soon as it does start popping up, it's like, oh, here, just take another drink, have another pill, or veg out in front of the TV. Just ignore it. Don't deal with it. And in a lot of indigenous cultures, especially in Hawaiian culture, they actually celebrate when it first comes up instead of like pushing it back down. And like the tribe will actually have a ceremony because they say, well, that's your unconscious mind's way of letting you know it's time to heal and let this crap go. And when I heard that the first time, I was like, wow, really? Because like where I grew up, the way I was raised was to be a real man meant, look how much crap I can stuff in and take and not exposed to the world until you like have a heart attack or you blow up and, go fist fight 10 guys or something like that. And it was a totally different way for me to look at it. And so, my wife and I now, we've had a few arguments in front of the kids, but it's like, okay, we process through it and we're able to, I'm freaking amazed with myself still to this day when it happens. It's like, all right, I'm able to take a step back and it's like, okay, wait a minute. So let's shake it off a minute. Now look, this was said, this triggered me this way. That's how it made me feel. I don't believe that's how you took it. We'll actually rationally talk it out. So it's like they get to see that proper way to process emotion and understand it instead of what I grew up in, where it was just like all of a sudden things start flying across the room and all of that. And then somebody just blows out of the house, and that's how it ended. Was we get along when we're not around each other. And my dad would go out on a party binge with his friends for 3 or 4 days, and we went singing. And that's how you resolve conflict, or he'd go out and fist fight somebody to get it out of it. And it was like, yeah, okay, that's not how to do it. I guess, you're right though. It's one thing. Sometimes I feel like there's a flaw in the design. It's like anybody can end up being a parent, but it's like to be a true parent, and it takes work. Relationships take work of all sorts. And, there's, when I learn different things, there's times I want to go, my dad long gone, but my mom's still around. There's times I want to go and just kind of grab her, like, what are you thinking? But I understand. It's like, there's no manual for this, and we're all figuring it out the best we can. And she did way better than her parents, and hopefully I'm doing better than mine. And, we move forward. But
and hopefully there's more people that, by listening to podcasts like this and others out there of people like me and yourself that are, willing to, be honest and transparent about, not being perfect people, and it's not, and it's actually very popular right now. For in this space, people are just really just craving authenticity because we live in such a culture of not real, highlight reel. We're in highlight reel culture.
Yeah.
Which is not, dude, our highlights don't, our low lights way far way out the highlights in life in general,
Yeah. We have this false idea, like it's, everybody's comparing, like you say, it's like looking at everyone else's highlights and then comparing it to our behind the scenes blooper reels of the shit we don't want anybody to see. And it's like, no, look, that person, actually, the more highlights they post, the more screwed up they are and what they're trying to hide. Mm-hmm. It's like, look, we all have good moments. We all have bad. And like you say, unfortunately, like the highs only come here and there. So yes, celebrate them when they're there. But don't turn your back and hide the lows. It's like, be vulnerable with them. Be there with them. Be present. They're here for a reason. And without the lows, we wouldn't appreciate the highs anyway, right? Yeah. So, because we take things for granted so easy, just it's in our design, and it's good to want better for ourselves, and we're creatures of growth. But it's like, don't fake it and like just pretend like there's no issues. It's like, because then those issues grow into bigger issues. So you got to face them at some point, and the more you face them head on, and the sooner you do it, it's like killing Godzilla when he was a baby lizard. It's like it doesn't grow out of proportion, and then it makes room actually for more highs and even the better, the even keel, the middle ground will be even more enjoyable and more consistent. But.
Yeah, I definitely like. I don't know. For me, it's like I'm not hiding anymore. And a lot of the times it would be like that. It's like, I know this little monster's lurking back there somewhere. You know what I mean? And when is it gonna come out and you would never know, you know what I mean? What would trigger it? I got rid of all the substances and I'm not doing, X, Y, and Z anymore, which, really took me down, but I'm not dealing with the problem, and the substances were just a byproduct of the, or symptoms of the actual problem. Well, God damn it. What's that problem? What's the problem? I don't know what the problem is. What is the problem? I just keep having all these problems. What's the problem? You're the fucking problem.
Yeah. That's, I listened to that podcast you were interviewed on. And I was like, as you were talking, I was like, man, is that me or him? I was like, cause so many things you were saying, it's like, wow, dude, we so much lived almost the same life in a lot of ways. And, I remember, finally, like the last time I was arrested, I was sitting in a jail cell, and I was actually laughing. Like the cops got really mad at me because they thought I was being just an absolute ass to them. But I was like, I kind of had this moment, and part of what, you've been there, like you can't let them know they got you, right? So got to play it cool and all this. But there was a moment where I actually started laughing a little bit because it was just like, and it was to myself. It was like, you dumbass, like you've got nobody to blame here at all. It's like finally all excuses were gone. It's like, and one of my mentors told me way after that, but he's like, everywhere you go, there you are. And what he's trying to tell me is like, you can't play the victim because in every situation in your life, you are the common factor. And it's like somehow you manifested it, you called it in. And I'd had that realization a little bit, like say last time I got arrested when I was, I don't know, I was like 25 or something like that. And 24, 25. And it's like, hey, yep. And I just kind of started laughing. The cop's like, what's so funny? And I was like, I don't even know how to explain it. But, and I was, it was for distribution of, or intent to distribute cocaine. Or narcotics, officially is how they say it. Yeah. But I was like, thinking, I'm like, man, I'm facing all sorts of trouble ahead of me. But I'm trying to get mad at them. I was trying to get mad at the girl I was with who was the dummy who kept running out of the hotel room and causing attention and all this stuff. But then I was like, I can't. Like I brought all this. I did every bit of it. It's like I created it, and I just started kind of laughing because it was actually quite empowering to have that, like, come to Jesus meeting with yourself of, like, look, snap out of it. And because like once you start taking responsibility for the screw ups in your life, and there are plenty of times in life that someone takes advantage of someone else and hurts someone, and we're victims. But staying there beyond that point of the moment it happens, you're victimizing your damn self. And once you understand that and like start taking responsibility for how you respond to those situations instead of reacting out of emotion and baggage and ego and everything else, it's like that. It hurts. It sucks to point that finger back at yourself. It's not fun, but damn, it's empowering, because then you start realizing it's like I do have some control. I can actually not allow this to completely take me out. And it's like look at every hero movie ever made. It's like there's a point where the hero gets rocked and gets knocked down, but he chooses to stand back up and go back at it, or she does. And it's like instead of staying there, it's like if they stayed in that low spot and just gave up, it's like it wouldn't be a movie and we wouldn't watch it, right? And it's like the same thing. It's like, man, be the hero in your life and stand up and go to it. It's like, because the beautiful part is you're the writer, the director, the producer, the lead actor in your life. But most of us just give ourselves a walk-on piece, or maybe like a supporting role. And it's like, dude, you're the lead actor. Take it. Get in there, stand strong and rock it.
Yeah, a lot of us wouldn't even cast ourselves in our own movie.
Just have a stunt double play off on it, or something. It's like, it's
it was so there was a time when I think one of the last times that I got arrested for identity theft, and that was really appealing to me because I didn't like myself anyways, so I didn't have to be myself. I could be all these other people, and I could make the IDs and the credit cards and everything else to go along with being this person.
I can relate to feeling like that. Yeah.
And so like the point, like I had been doing this for so long and like using people's, information for so long that when I got arrested, I couldn't remember my own. Literally, I couldn't remember my own social security number. I couldn't remember my own like driver's license number because I had every time that I was in a, it was almost like, to me, it was how an actor, prepares for a role, right? Mm-hmm. So I would get all of the information that the person that I was trying to be from their address, their legit address that I had to, their ID number and all of that. And so whenever I would get arrested or if I got, questioned by something, it didn't seem like I was, not that person. Right. And so, I was just like, I was crazy. I was like, fuck. I'm sitting there, the cops asking me the question, like, who are you really? All right. Cause you've got 7 different IDs and like a dumbass, I've got 7 different IDs and your credit cards to match them in this wallet along, and they're like, who are you? Which one of these are you? And I'm like, well, I'm not any of them. They're like, well, all right, well, what's your social? And I'm like, dude, I can't fucking remember. I don't know. Give me a minute. I have to think about it. So
and that's like you said, and that's just like the drugs. It's like it's a symptom or it's something used to cover up a symptom, and it's and so many people. Like, I'm sure there are some people that hear this, where it's like, oh my God, and they're like trying to pull away from me, but it's like it's reflecting something in them because everyone's hiding behind a different identity somewhere in their life. Like, so few people are really being their true, authentic selves, and that's, and it's people put more plans in a Friday night than they do their life, and usually it's all around, going out drinking and forgetting who the hell they are. And it's kind of funny, comical from the outside, but it's really sad. Like, but we've all been told since we're kids, like, to be someone else, basically. Or every time we've made self-expression, if it went outside, if it was coloring outside the lines of life, everybody like stuff us back in, right? And we had all these rules and things in school system and like all this stuff. It was to keep us boxed in. And now if a kid expresses themselves too much or has too much energy, now it's like, oh, we're just going to call them ADD. And it's like, not every kid on the planet is ADD. I'm sorry. Like, yes, the condition exists, but it's like a lot of these kids are just like us. I don't know many adults who like sitting there nonstop, and
they're bored.
Yeah.
They're bored. They're not, you're not teaching. So that's the problem with school. All right. You know, you got some kids, and I was one of those kids where, like, I literally got wrapped in corrugated paper in my desk in the middle of the classroom, you know what I mean? Because I was always, you know, I'm always like talking to people, you know, just funny and cracking jokes and, you know, like the class clown. And for them, you know, and that was in the 4th grade. The 3rd grade, I got stuck in a closet. You know, they shoved my desk facing into the closet in the back of the room, and while everybody else was in the front doing their thing, you know. So, I mean, I had teachers, like, if that happened today, I'd get some money, boy.
Oh, you'd be loaded, and the school would be shut down. There'd be people in prison, you know, all sorts of stuff. There's no telling what would happen. But and that's the thing too. Like, we're on the opposite side of the spectrum now, and it's like, and you know, like, just like I was saying, I showed up in previous relationships of like exploding at some points and then not doing anything at others. It's like, man, the truth and the solution is in the middle somewhere. It's like, you know, because the pendulum of life is going to swing, and it's like we've got to be flexible with that. But yeah, it's yeah, punishment when we were in school was ridiculous. And then I remember I asked to go to the bathroom. I was in this happened in 3rd and 4th grade. And dude, kindergarten too. Wet my pants 3 different times in school, and you know, that doesn't make you many friends.
Yeah,
and it does get you a lot of attention. But it was because one teacher I was just terrified to ask at the bathroom because she had like hit me with, you know, wooden paddles and all sorts of stuff, and not just across the behind. But 2 others I had to ask, and they refused to let me go. They're like, you sit there. And then I would start to go and like just walk out of the room because I'm like, I'm gonna wet myself. And they would stand in front of me and not allow me to go. And then I would wet myself in front of them and then get ridiculed for that, you know, and a big deal would be made. And that made things even worse. That's when school was no longer a safe zone. And that brought up other issues because like it had happened to me once on a road trip with my dad when I was like 5 years old. And he stripped me down naked on the side of a busy intersection, like pulled into a busy intersection right off the exit ramp of the freeway and held me up above the car and like walked around screaming, trying to get other drivers' attention to embarrass me. So for that to happen in school was traumatizing because it brought up all that stuff. And I said, man, we do all this stuff, like, and don't think of the long-term consequences. And, you know, something I hear, an idea I had when I became a parent was I would hear all my friends talk about raising kids, or everybody just saying raising kids. And one day it just kind of hit me. I was like, wait a minute, we're all screwed up. And it's because of the way we were raised when we were kids. It's like, we're not raising kids, we're raising future adults. And it completely changed how I interacted with mine. And also too, I was always kind of rebellious. Not that I was rebellious, I was punished for being rebellious, but I always wanted to understand why I was doing something. And if they had a reason, like, I'd totally do it. I was, you know, especially as a kid, like, you know, a kid always wants to people please at some level. And, but I like knowing why. I like understanding why things work and why we do the things we do. And, you know, and especially now, like I geek out on human behavior and psychology and everything. But I was always told, like, you know, most of us were, especially from our generation, was, you know, because I said so. And my dad was like, you don't question me at all. So I would, for a long time, that was the hardest part about being a coach, was learning how to question, because it was programmed for me not to. I'm not allowed. Yeah. But luckily I worked through that years ago. But with my kids, I've told them since day one, I was like, you always have the right to ask me why. And if I ever say because I said so, you don't have to do it. Because if I can't come up with a better reason than that, then it's really not that important. And there have been plenty of times I've regretted that. You know? And but I did have a caveat in it. I'm like, look, you need to trust me enough to understand that sometimes in life, I'm not going to have the time to give you a reason right then. And I'm just going to need to ask you to go along with it, and we'll talk about it later. And we always kind of did that. But it gave them just this a confidence and a self-image that they had value and they matter. They're, I mean, you know, I screwed them up plenty of other ways, but in that way, like, you know, they've always been, we've had a good communication line, and they come to me with stuff. And, Yeah, and I don't keep them imprisoned either. Like they roam the neighborhood by themselves. I mean, we don't live in the neighborhood I grew up in, but we're doing better than that at least. But yeah, it's amazing to see the difference between them and their friends, with how they look at the world and also how they look at themselves and how they interact with me versus their friends interacting with their parents. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it's like, all right, I did at least one thing right with them. So, but yeah, there were definitely times where I wish I wouldn't have said that because it's like, well, why? Oh, I don't need to do it. Oh, dang, I actually have to come up with a reason now. I didn't think this through. But, yeah.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess you can go, the moral of the story here is, you gotta raise your little humans to be good humans. And, you can't really, especially in the culture that we're in right now where, I catch myself, I'll be on my phone, cause when my situation is that 2 days a week I do this, schedule interviews. And then, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm with my daughter helping my ex co-parent because she works from home. So I have to keep my daughter occupied or else she's 3 years old. So else she'd be all over her, mommy. Mm-hmm. And she couldn't get anything done. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not working. And, if I can save some money on child support or daycare, yeah, sure. I'll come do it.
That's a fortune. Both of those things.
Yeah, put the money factor in there. Ooh, I'm motivated. Let's go. Yep. But it's really cool. Being able to do that and to watch them grow up. And I'm trying to recover here because I lost my train of thought. So I'm like, I was going somewhere and you see, you're just trying to like hopped off the track and like, shit. Nope, it's not coming. I'm not gonna be able to do it.
Yeah, it's really being in the parenting role. Like it's really it is a beautiful journey. It's not for everybody, but that's for sure. But to really think about it, so, man, I get to actually shape a human. I mean, it's kind of terrifying in some aspects because it's like, man, their future is really right here on how I show up. But something I was told, actually I delivered it to a client the other day, but I was told years ago, it's like, whatever you see in your kid is a reflection of you in some form. And they're like, with them, whatever you want them to be, you just have to be it. And, so if you want to fix something in your kid, fix it in yourself first. And at first, like, nah, whatever. But then it's like, yeah, you got to put that finger back, again. But yeah, it's now, my oldest, he's getting close to 13 and seeing where he's at versus where I was. Cause when my kids turned around, when each one of them had their 8th birthday, all 3 of them, there was a little bit of, when my oldest turned 8, I had actually like some true anxiety around it. And then, but with each of them, there was a little bit there of, it's just when it happened with my oldest, I wasn't aware of what it was at first. And I had to do some reflection and I figured it out pretty quick. But I was like, oh yeah, when I was 8 years old, I know where I was at. And so I started checking in. It's like, damn, have I done my part for those first 7, 8 years to make sure that didn't happen? And luckily it was, I felt pretty good with where they were at. My youngest actually just turned 8, right at the beginning of the quarantine. So we weren't able to have a party for him, but that was, it was actually kind of neat how that worked out because instead of having the distraction of all his friends over and a party and all of that, it was just all of us hanging out. I was able to really kind of sit with that and just kind of check in with him and watch and just take in some gratitude for knowing, okay, at least they are totally different than I was as a kid, especially my youngest. He's not afraid to voice his opinion to me at all. Very outspoken, very headstrong, I'll say politely. But yeah, that was it was a huge relief for me to see all of them go, that point in their life going into 8, 9, 10 and on up and seeing how much better they're doing than I was. Okay. I'm not doing it perfect. I know I've messed them up somewhere and I've made a lot of screw ups, but it's like, at least, they're not the reflection of what I was, and they seem to be a reflection of themselves. So that's the goal.
Yeah, it's good that you get a chance to witness that. You know what I mean? You actually see the fruit of of your labors there, I guess, so to say, you know, and, you know, you get these milestones where you can actually, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. It's just, it's fun, man. I don't know. And you're right, man. It's not, being a parent is not for everybody. You know, I've learned how to, like, if I would have had a boy, I probably wouldn't be, I'd probably be a lot harder. You know what I mean? And my patience level would, because you can be a little bit more, rough with a boy than you can with a girl. You know what I mean? Whether it's, you know, stern or just, or just in the tact that you use to deal with either one of them. You know what I mean? The tact that I have to use with my daughter is like, all right, well, I have to soften things up because she's a girl. She doesn't understand some stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really easy to hurt her feelings. You know, she doesn't understand. And probably the same for a boy. I don't know. I just, I'm glad I had a girl because it's allowed me to soften up, enough to be able to deal with her. Not deal with her, but,
be with her.
Yeah, be with her, you know, and just be mindful of the fact that, you know, hey, soften your shit up a little bit.
Yeah, it's, you know, just naturally and genetically, like, boys are actually like more driven by shame, and then girls are more driven by fear, and that carries that follows us through life. Like, in a seminar room, I'll ask, you know, how many women in the last week have had a moment where they were actually afraid for their safety. And, you know, like 90% of the room will raise their hand for like in the past week. You ask the men in the room the same question, but say instead of in the last week, like in the last month, and maybe like 10 to 15% will raise their hand. And it just shows us this nice visual of like, this is part of the reason why we're men and women are totally different. It's because women think about, you know, going out in a vacant parking lot, like they're thinking, am I going to get attacked? Am I going to get raped? You know, stuff like that is floating around unconsciously. And with men, the shame comes in from, you know, in the tribal days, it was, if you're not a good enough warrior, you can't protect the tribe, and the tribe could get wiped out. If you're not a good enough hunter, they're going to starve. You know, it's all this. So constantly from the time we were boys, we were raised and trained to be that warrior, that hunter, whatever the tribe needed. And so it was constantly like, am I doing good enough at it? Am I? And then being passed down through all that time. And now obviously we don't have those same things to protect, but we're asking the same questions in almost every context. And obviously if you ask in the context of where a warrior would, there's a higher confidence that comes with just taking that position on. But when you're asking it, just making dinner, or, you know, just in how you show up at a job, it's a little different. It beats us up a little different now. But yeah, it shows up even as kids, and like say, don't have to, with women, or girls, it's, you can take the softer approach because, and there's that polarity of like you're doing of getting a little softer and going with the fluidity. But they show, so many reports show us that boys actually flourish better when they have kind of that rougher environment and rough house environment. And then, you know, and then the play and the wrestle and everything. Cause obviously like when you play with a girl, even when you like rough house with her, there's a different approach to it. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's a softer side. And then, and that's how she'll flourish. So, you know, so many dads end up raising their daughters the way they would raise a boy, and then they have there's a rejection of their femininity. And I'm not bringing up anything about like sexuality or anything there. It's like actual the traits that show up, and then she has identity issues. And same with boys. You know, it's I had quite a bit of like an inner conflict of wanting to win my dad's acceptance, but then also rejecting him because of the way he treated us. So there's like this rejection of masculinity. Then I would see my mom, and, you know, I was raised by a single mom, and then my sister was there, and I would see how men treated them and see all the heartbreak and stuff. And then I would have to hear about, you know, how to be a good boy and a good man, and, you know, all men are dogs or all men are this. And so it creates these inner conflicts where we start rejecting this. It's like, yeah, it's a slippery slope, man, the parent ride. And don't realize how we're traumatizing our kids all the time. But yeah, having that awareness like you do to pick up on it. And whenever you screw up, you do. And, another great thing I did with my kids one time is I blew up a little bit. I was, on edge, and but I caught myself a little bit later, and I calmed down, and then I went back and I apologized. It was like, it wasn't about you. I was dealing with some stuff I didn't know how to handle it, and it just got very human, got vulnerable in front of them. But it set that example. So when they've done the same, they've been able to come to me and be like, hey, I messed up. I did this, or I'm dealing with it. It allows that space of opening up the communication. Because just off of knowing what I know of you, it's like I'm sure you were very much like me, like almost afraid to ever go and open up to someone, and especially parent of like my son's going through, he's pre-teen, so puberty's on the map, and like we've had some conversations. He's like, he'll be crying, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. I shouldn't be crying. I'm not sad, but I'm just crying. I'm like, dude, it's all right. It's cool, man. It's hormones, man. You're gonna get through it. Don't worry about it. Man, it's like just let it flow, let it process. It's happening for a reason. It's cleansing, and because if I cried when I was a kid, my dad would give me something to cry about and then punish me for crying for that. It's kind of ironic. He's like, I'm gonna give you something to cry about, and then when you cry, I'm gonna punish you for it.
I'm a compound interest, those damn tears, kid.
Yeah. It's like if you give me a pair of socks as a gift and I put them on, like, would you punish me for that? It's like, so why are you going to give me something to cry about and then punish me for that? But human experience, man. It's a hell of a ride.
Yeah, it is, man. It is, for sure. So anyways, we're going to have to wrap this up here. Go ahead and plug all your places, your spaces, and everywhere anybody can find you and you want to appear in the show notes.
Oh, okay. First, we're actually putting together a little mini course to help people understand like where baggage comes from and what you can do about it and things like that, and keep it from accumulating. The final touches are getting done in the editing. So hopefully through this weekend, I should have it back. Once that's done, I'll get you the link for it. I just love to gift it to your audience, because especially right now with everything going on. With quarantine and everything else, like it'll really help people do some healing around that. Do men's empowerment coaching, and my wife does women's empowerment. But help men become not just healthy fathers and healthy in their relationship, but just it all starts with us, right? If we're not happy and fully in alignment with who we are and congruent, then we don't show up the way we're proud of. So it was very, very near and dear to my heart to heal myself, and then also to know that I'm raising 3 contributing males for society. Then also my wife and I together have a coaching training academy where we actually teach like coaching technique, like actual like release techniques for traumas and PTSD, phobias, things like that. And it's an actual certification program. There's 2 of them. And we have a couple of groups that are getting ready to graduate, go through their exams now. And then we'll be actually launching another part of that where we actually teach how to get clients, how to actually have a coaching business. That's been getting asked a lot. And everybody can find me on all the normal platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Every one of them is .com/Kip Brooks Coach. So reach out to me there. Any questions, anything at all. If I don't have an answer for you, I can definitely tell you where to go. So or put you in touch with someone who can help. So.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you for the the gift for the listeners out there. We'll definitely get that in the show notes when you get it. This isn't going to air for a little bit. Like I've got a huge queue right now, so I've got to start. Just I'm just going to simplify my editing process, so I can run through some of these and just let them go and not be so picky about the ums and all the other dumb words that come out of my mouth that make me sound silly.
Yeah, keep it human, keep it real. Like you said, people need that authenticity, especially now in today's world. So
yeah. So yeah, when you get a chance, shoot me an email with with everything that you're going to want it to appear there with that link as well, and a picture of yourself so I can give it to make you a promo art thing and a clip that you can share on your social media platforms.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get all that. Should have everything in, hopefully, to you this weekend, as long as everything goes right with editing that final course video, because it's like a four-part thing. Yeah, I'll get you all that.
Cool.
Absolutely, man.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening to the podcast and reaching out and wanting to talk to me today. It was a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Love talking about parenting, especially since I am one.
Yeah, enjoy the ride. The age yours is at was actually always my favorite. When they're speaking broken English and walking around like little drunk monkeys and stuff, like 2 to 4. So much fun, dude. I loved it. Everybody talked about terrible twos. I was like, man, I had so much fun during that time.
Yeah,
because they were getting into stuff, and it gave me I got to be a kid again that I was never actually a kid. So it was really cool. But thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing, and keep it up. And yeah, your story touched me in a whole lot of different ways. So,
well, I appreciate that, man. That's why we do what we do. Hopefully people resonate with it and learn something or reach out and say, hey, man, I've been through that too.
Yeah. It's so empowering to know that like someone else has been through it. We get caught up in thinking that we're the only ones dealing with our crap. It's like, man, nah, everybody's got shit going on. It's like, so being able to share it, like, it's amazing. The simplest little story or whatever just plants a seed with somebody and they end up, not taking their life that day or something. You never know the impact it's going to have. It's magical. We all can be a hero in some form. So
absolutely,
it's great to see people like you out here doing it. So thank you so much, man.
All right. Thank you, Kip. I appreciate it. And have a great weekend.
You too, bro.
All right. Bye.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.